Have you ever wondered what tortures await the wicked in hell? Or what it might be like to be a soul trapped in purgatory, just biding your time and waiting for your ascent into the great kingdom? Or what it would be like to gaze upon the face of Jesus Christ, or to meet God at the gates of heaven? Well, Dante Alighieri certainly did, and he's perhaps the best poet in history to ever try to capture the afterlife. And he did so with such a beautiful love story that maybe even Shakespeare would be jealous. So if you're ready, join me as we take this tour through what lies beyond. This is Dante's Divine Comedy. The story begins with a poet named Dante wandering through a frightfully dark forest, searching for a path that continues to elude him. In the distance, he sees a great mountain that glistens softly in the only speck of light breaking through the blackness. He climbs desperately towards the light, but is stopped by a leopard, a lion, and a she-wolf. And when Dante sees these great beasts, he flees in fear. When he returns to the darkness, he is greeted by the spirit of the poet Virgil, a great hero to Dante. The sight of his hero briefly frees him from his fear and gives him a sense of bliss. But then Virgil tells him that the she-wolf comes from the pits of hell, and until a great hound chases her back to her fiery home, Dante must find a different path. Thankfully, though, Virgil offers to guide him, but first, they must pass through all 9 levels of hell. As the two men approach the fiery gates, Dante worries that he may not be up to the task. After all, he only knows of 2 men who passed through hell and returned to tell the tale: Jesus Christ and Aeneas. Soon, though, he is reassured by a story from Virgil, who says that Beatrice, Dante's deceased lover, came down from heaven all the way to hell, where she found Virgil and asked him to help Dante. He is further reassured when he hears that Saint Lucia and the Virgin Mary herself are also watching Dante. At the gates of hell, they see the inscription, "Abandon all hope, you who enter here." This is quickly met with the sound of cries of agony pouring out from the depths, leading Dante to be even more unsure about his decision. He learns that it is not those that did evil that cry out, though. Instead, it is those souls who have not made any true moral commitments, and therefore have been rejected by both heaven and hell. These souls reside in the anti-inferno, where they are given the Sisyphusian task of chasing after a banner which they will never catch, all the while being attacked by insects. Dante and Virgil arrive at the river Acheron, where they are greeted by a man rowing a boat full of recently deceased souls. He recognizes Dante as a living soul and hesitates to bring him across the river, but finally relents after talking with Virgil. He does, however, warn Dante not to touch the dead. Suddenly an earthquake tears hell apart, and fire shoots up from the ground. Dante becomes so frightened that he trembles, and suddenly everything around him goes black. A great clap of thunder fills Dante's eyes open, and he finds himself in front of a great pit, which is the home of those in limbo. These souls are the ones that existed before Christ came to earth, and those who were never baptized. This first circle of hell is the most tame of all the circles, but still, it is not somewhere that you'd want to find yourself. The only people that have been saved from it are figures from the Old Testament that Christ saved during his journey to hell. To his delight, Dante soon meets the great poets and philosophers from antiquity, like Homer, Ovid, Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. But their journey does not end here, so the two must continue on their way. When they arrive at the second circle of hell, the monster Minos is assigning which circle of hell each person will go to. After giving Dante a warning not to continue, the monster moves to the side and allows the two of them to decide their fate. They walk into a great storm whose wind blows like a hurricane and whose rain pours in unrelenting ice-cold droplets. This place is for those who have committed the sin of lust and whose punishment is to endure the inability to ground themselves as they blow in the gale. Dante manages to speak to some of the souls who have become slaves to their own passions, and he pities them. Many were married and found themselves in love with another person, like Helen of Troy or Cleopatra. In his grief, Dante collapses again. As Dante begins to regain consciousness, he feels droplets of rain again chilling his skin. But now, a putrid smell assaults his nostrils. He realizes that he is now in the third circle of hell. He sees Cerberus, a three-headed dog, towering over him, snarling at them and preventing the two from advancing. Virgil thinks quickly and throws an object for the great beast to chase. This allows them to carry on unmolested. The men then arrive in the circle of the gluttonous, where humans are chained to the ground with all sorts of filth pouring on them. The stench is unbearable, and Dante recoils from it. A voice rises up from the filth and announces that he is named Ciacco, and that he once hailed from Florence. This initiates a discussion on the politics of Florence, which leads Dante to discover that many well-intentioned politicians are in an even deeper circle of hell. The conversation ends with Ciacco asking Dante to remember his name, and Virgil and Dante again take to the road. The two men then come to the guardian of the fourth circle of hell, who is a demon named Plutus that personifies great wealth. This demon guards those who spent their lives in crippling greed. After a brief conversation, Virgil convinces him to step aside, and Dante follows close behind, in fear of what lies beyond. They come to a pit, where people push heavy objects around a circle in two groups. Once they made it halfway around the circle, they crash into one another, turning around and repeating the pattern perpetually. Dante is horrified at the hopelessness and rage that emanates from these suffering beings. This leads him to wonder who these people were in their time on Earth, to which Virgil replies that they were often members of the church hierarchy who either spent too lavishly or were too miserly. This reminds Dante of the importance of detachment from worldly possessions. As they continue to walk, the path leads along the river Styx, where bodies lie encased in mud, writhing and battling amongst themselves. These are the people that lived a life of rage. Beneath the waves of the river are the sullen who lived in darkness even when the sun shined. When they arrive in the fifth circle of hell, they come to a boatman who takes them across the river. Suddenly, in the mist, a figure appears and calls to them from the water. They approach this figure, and Dante recognizes him as Filippo Argenti. But Dante does not pity him, so he leaves him behind, and the other sinners tear him apart as the boat carries on. A dark city rises out of the fog. Virgil announces that this is the city of Dis. Slowly, the city's tremendous gates grow as they make their approach. Above them, they hear the flap of powerful wings, and a voice echoes out, asking them why they are there. They look up to see fallen angels above them. Again, Virgil attempts to use his silver tongue to gain them passage, but this time it fails, and the city's gates are shut to them. Dante begins to realize that they may truly never make it to heaven after all, and a chilling fear overtakes him. This is worsened by the sight of three furies that happen upon the two men. With their tongues slithering and their tails coiling, they yell for Medusa to come turn Dante into stone, then burst into a snarling fit of laughter. When all hope seems lost, a messenger from heaven appears behind them, sending all the demons and evil creatures fleeing in all directions. The power of heaven is far too great, even for them. The messenger demands that the city be opened so that the two may pass. The fallen angels are no match for his strength, so they open the gates. He gives them his blessing, and Dante and Virgil continue on their way. Once they enter the city gates, flames surround them, burning the hairs off of Dante's arms, and glowing so bright that he can barely look ahead. They now stand at the tombs of the heretics. He comes across a man named Farinata, who hails from Tuscany. As they discuss politics, Dante quickly realizes that this man, like the rest of the heretics, is bound to see only things in the future and cannot see the present. Dante realizes that the two must move on again. They come upon the seventh circle of hell, whose stench burns Dante's nostrils. This circle is subdivided into three smaller circles based on the type of violence each person committed. The first is violence against neighbors, the second is violence against oneself, and the last is violence against God. The men journey towards the first ring, passing through a ravine of jagged rocks. When they return to a friendlier ground, ahead of them stands the Minotaur, blocking their path. Virgil taunts the great beast, who gets blinded by his own rage, allowing the two to slip past. That is when they see the fiercest sight yet. A river of hot blood bubbles with the bodies of those who committed violence against their neighbors. The souls try to crawl out to the boiling liquid, but their remaining flesh is filled with arrows that are shot by centaurs waiting on the banks. Virgil persuades the leader of the centaurs to provide a guide through this circle of hell. Their guide is named Nessus, and he allows them to climb on his back so he can show them the way. He tells them that Attila the Hun and Alexander the Great are among those punished here for perpetuating violence against countless numbers of people. Nessus guides them to the end of the first ring of the seventh circle of hell, then turns around. In the second ring, Dante and Virgil find themselves in charcoal-colored wood, which echoes with the sorrows of the souls contained within. But where are these souls? After snapping a twig off a tree and hearing its subsequent cries, he realizes that the trees are the souls of those people who were violent against themselves. They hear the story of a man who is the advisor to an emperor, but when gossip was spread about him, he took his own life, despite being generally honorable in nature. They also learn that these souls are turned into trees initially when they are sent here by Minos, and they grow deep roots in the ground before harpies come and tear them to pieces. Eventually, when it comes time for all souls to reunite with their bodies, these souls will not be reunited with theirs because they rejected their bodies on earth. Instead, their flesh will hang from the branches of a tree. This conversation comes to an end when two young men come running through the woods chased by a pack of dogs. One of the men tries to hide in a bush, but is savagely ripped apart by the animals. The bush that the man dove into is also living, and it tells Dante that Florence has been ravaged by violence since it made St. John the Baptist their patron saint instead of the Roman god Mars. Dante collects the bush's leaves and gives them back to it. They then enter the third ring of the seventh circle of hell, where flaming hot sand covers the ground and burning ash rains down from the sky. This is for those who were violent against God. This ring is again divided into three. The first zone is for the blasphemers, who must lie on the sand burning from its heat, as well as the ash that falls from the sky. They then come upon another blood-red river, and Dante learns that all of hell's rivers flow from a statue under a mountain in Crete. The second section is designated for sodomites who have turned against nature. These people walk in the boiling rain. Virgil requests part of the cord that Dante is using as a belt, and he throws it into the river below. Then a giant sea creature comes up from the waters that has the head of a man, the body of a serpent, and the feet of a dog. Virgil stays to talk to the beast while Dante goes into the third section of the third ring of the seventh circle of hell, where he finds those who are guilty of usury. These souls must sit in the rain of fire with a purse around their neck that holds figures of those they harmed in the pursuit of wealth. When he returns to Virgil, Dante learns that Virgil has convinced this creature to fly them to the eighth circle of hell, which he promptly does. The eighth circle of hell is known as Malabolge, or evil pouches, which are a series of pits that house those who are guilty of fraud. In the first pit are men who deceive women. The second pit is full of human waste and is for those who are guilty of flattery. The third pit is for those who have bought and sold ecclesiastical pardons or offices. These men have their heads in the dirt and their feet burned by flame. Among these souls, Dante finds Pope Nicholas III, and Dante uses this moment to speak out against all of those in the church who use their position for financial gain, and says that St. Peter did not pay Christ for the keys to heaven. The fourth pit is for those who use magic and other sorcery to try to look into the future. Their punishment is to have their heads turned backwards, so they must always look behind them. The fifth pit is filled with tar and houses the barterers. As Dante and Virgil look on, a great beast grabs the soul and throws it into the darkness. Suddenly claws come up from the black substance and tear the soul down beneath the surface. These evil claws are known as Malabrache, and Virgil convinces them to let the two pass. The Malabrache provide 10 demons to go with the two men, and also tell them that the bridge ahead is broken, but that there is an alternate path. Two of the demons get stuck in the tar after chasing a fleeing soul, and Virgil and Dante use the opportunity to escape from their new companions. The demons chase after them, but are doomed to dwell in the fifth pit, so Dante and Virgil escape safely to the sixth. This houses the hypocrites, and these souls have large capes, cowls, and hats, which weigh them down greatly. Here, they learn that the demon lied about the bridge being out, and they realize that they must return to their original path. When they arrive at the seventh pit, they see snakes chasing after naked sinners who, when caught, have their hands and feet bound, and once they are bitten, the sinners burst into flames and are reborn in the ashes to repeat the cycle. This is the pit of thieves. The eighth pit contains those who are frauds or who misled others for their own gain. These souls burst into flame that will not be extinguished. Ulysses is one of them, and we learn that he is in this pit because of his role in the Trojan War. There are other fraudsters there too, such as Guido de Montefeltro. In the ninth pit, They see a line of souls circling perpetually with a demon standing there slicing each one of the sinners open as they walk. Mohammed, the prophet of the Muslims, is there among them, and Dante learns that this is the place for sowers of scandal and schism. For the sin of trying to split the world, they are split themselves. The 10th pit houses the falsifiers, and it is divided into 4 zones. The first zone contains souls that are covered in scabs that they endlessly scratch at without relief. The second pit is where the sinners tear at each other with their teeth. These are those who are falsifiers of other people. The third zone is for those who created false coins, and they are condemned to madness. Finally, the fourth zone is for those who bear false witness, and these souls are afflicted with a number of ailments. In the center of the 8th circle of hell are a number of giants who stand as tall as modern skyscrapers, and whose feet stretch all the way down to the 9th circle of hell. One among them, Antaeus, is convinced by Virgil to lift them down to the 9th circle, where the traitors lie. The chill of the air now deeply contrasts to the fires of the previous 8 levels. Ice surrounds them, and a great lake spreads out as far as the eye can see. In the waves shiver all the souls who betrayed their very own kin. This place is called Cana, after Cain, who slew his own dear brother Abel. The pair proceed to the second ring of the 9th circle of hell, where those who betrayed their homeland or their political allies dwell. These sinners are encased in ice and are forced to look down in shame. This place is referred to as Antenora. Dante and Virgil then travel to the third ring, Ptolemaea, which is designated for those who betrayed their own guests. These souls float on their backs in the ice-cold water, completely immobilized from the cold. In fact, they are so frozen that they can't even cry because their tears instantly turn to ice. Suddenly, Dante's attention is pulled from the suffering of the souls to a cold wind that tears across his face. In the distance, he can make out a great black mountain, but fog blurs his ability to see it in its entirety. This is the 4th ring of the 9th circle of hell, where those who betrayed their benefactors are condemned. Naturally, this place is called Judica. These sinners are frozen in ice, completely immobile, and without the ability to express emotions, just like their cold hearts on earth. As Dante approaches the great mountain, it becomes clear that it is no mountain after all. Instead, it is a great figure, Satan himself. He stands in the great icy lake, flapping his wings, but going nowhere. He has 3 heads, and in each of his mouths is contained a great sinner. One houses Judas, another Brutus, and contained in the final mouth is Cassius. Virgil instructs Dante to climb onto his back, which startles Dante as Virgil is no spry young soul. Suddenly, with Dante on his back, Virgil jumps onto Satan's hair and slides down like a fire pole. Suddenly, as they reach Satan's waist, the world flips upside down, and they are now climbing up. They have passed through the center of earth, where Satan got stuck when he fell from heaven, and now the two are headed towards purgatory. Dante breathes a sigh of relief as fresh air now fills his nostrils. He looks back at hell behind him and reflects on his experience there, and then looks forward to see the beauty that lies in front of him. He sees Venus glowing in the sky, and 4 stars shining brightly that are said to have not been seen by man since the days of Adam and Eve. This is the spot that once was the Garden of Eden. He calls out to the great muses of ancient Greece, stunned by the beauty of this moment, but he cannot dally long, as his journey is far from over. Now he must begin a walk through the place where souls are cleansed before they reach heaven, a place known as purgatory. In the distance sits an old man which Dante and Virgil approach. Dante quickly recognizes him as Cato the Younger, the man who took his own life rather than watch Rome fall into tyranny under Caesar. Cato is amazed that Dante was allowed to exit hell, to which Virgil explains that Beatrice has requested that Virgil lead him to heaven. Cato nods his head in agreement, but requests that they go down to the shore and gird Dante with a reed to cleanse him. While on the shore, a bright light fills their eyes as an angel guides a ship full of souls that are to be saved. They sing out the Psalm of Exodus with a rich harmony that fills Dante's ears. When they arrive on the shore, Dante tries to hug a soul who he recognizes as his friend, Casella, but his arms cannot embrace him as he is a floating soul and not a physical being. Dante instead requests that Casella sing like the olden days, and his voice enchants the crowd. When the souls again depart, Dante and Virgil head on their way as well. They continue to a hill, which is too steep to climb, so they try to ask some souls how to get over the mountain, but no one will answer them. That is, at least until a soul named Manfred responds by requesting that Dante tell his daughter that he returned to God after being excommunicated, and that if she will pray for him, his time in purgatory will be reduced. The path up the mountain is revealed to them, and they begin their daunting ascent. After a long while of climbing, they come upon a terrace where many souls rest. Dante recognizes one of them as an old friend named Belliqua, and he tells Dante that he must rest here for the entire time that he lived on Earth, since it took him until his death to repent. They also find that those who died a violent death are in purgatory because they did not make their final confession, so they ask Dante to request prayers for them on Earth. Dante wonders if the prayers will actually help these people, and Virgil reminds Dante of God's justice and love. After some more tiresome climbing, they come upon another soul who turns out to be also Italian. The warmth he has felt from Italians along his journey makes him reflect on the splintering that has happened within his country, and he laments it. The Italian that they meet is named Sordello, and Virgil explains to him that he is not allowed out of limbo because he was not a Christian. This is a sad fate, but not as insufferable as those who are tortured in hell for their sins. Virgil and Dante request that the man lead them higher through purgatory, which he agrees to do, but he tells them that there is no fixed path and that they are not allowed to climb at night. They come to a cliff that looks upon a breathtaking valley that is peppered with flowers, whose sweet aroma fills their nostrils. This is where they will make camp for the night. Upon arriving in the valley, they are greeted by a group of souls including Emperor Rudolph, the Prince of Ottokar, and King Henry of England, all of whom dwell in purgatory for their over-infatuation with worldly matters. As night falls, the group begins an evening hymn which summons two angels wearing bright green garments who carry broken swords in their hands. Sordello tells them that these guardian angels protect the souls from a great snake that dwells here. Dante peers up at the sky and notices that there are only 3 stars now, and not 4. As he sits gazing at them, a rustling sounds in the distance. Suddenly, a behemoth snake bursts from the trees and attacks the souls, but he is no match for the guardian angels. While sleeping, Dante is carried to purgatory proper without his knowledge. He wakes up to see a tremendous gate standing before him with an angel at its entrance holding a glowing sword. Virgil leads as they climb 3 stairs, the first of marble, the second of stone, and the third of red gemstone. Dante then falls before the angel and begs to be admitted through the gate. The angel grabs him and carves 7 P's into his head with a sword, and tells Dante to wash off his scars in purgatory. The angel then unlocks the great gates, and the sound of the hymn Te Deum Laudamus flows out. Dante and Virgil again set out on their journey, climbing a steep path which leads up the mountain. Along the path is a piece of marble which hosts several carvings such as the angel Gabriel speaking with the Virgin Mary and David dancing in front of the Ark of the Covenant. As Dante observes the carvings, he hears some souls coming up the trail, who are bent down carrying great stones. These are those guilty of the sin of pride who must carry a stone as heavy as their sin. Dante hears the sinners pray the Lord's Prayer, which they say is not for them, but for those on earth who are still guilty of sin. Dante pities them and hopes that the people will pray for these poor souls. Dante and Virgil then come upon the Angel of Humility, whose great wings shine in magnificence. The angel shows Dante and Virgil a set of stairs, which leads up the mountain. As the angel is showing them, one of his wings brushes against the forehead of Dante, which erases the first of the 7 P's. Virgil explains that as the 7 P's get erased, the journey will become easier. As they get to the next level, they see a group of souls guilty of the sin of envy, who lean on one another and have their eyes sewn shut. Among them, Dante finds an Italian woman who enjoyed others' suffering more than her own happiness. Dante promises to pray for her and find her loved ones on Earth. After hearing similar stories, Virgil explains to Dante that these people are punished because they focus on earthly things and not on heaven. Then they come to the Angel of Charity, who erases another P, then guides them up the 3rd set of stairs. As they climb, Virgil explains to Dante the importance of reciprocity and sharing, and how giving to others increases your own good, not just theirs. However, Dante is not yet ready for this lesson, because he still bears some sin. So Virgil explains that he will better understand this when he sees Beatrice. Suddenly, Dante is overcome with a vision that shakes him to the bone. He sees Mary discovering Jesus in the temple, the attempted execution of Pisastrius, and the stoning of Stephen. When he comes back to consciousness, he notices a thick cloud of smoke in the distance. The two walk through the smoke, completely unable to see, but they hear souls singing Lamb of God. A great voice rises up through the smoke and asks if Dante is among the living, which of course he admits. Dante asks the souls why there are so many sinners, and if it's some sort of divine will. The voice replies that humans have free will to choose, and the ability to discern between good and bad. On top of that, the soul explains that the people only behave as well as their leaders do, and with bad governance, the people just look towards pleasure. Dante and Virgil emerge from the smoke and see an angel in the distance. Suddenly, Dante is overcome by another vision, this time of wrath, such as people hanging like Haman and Lavinia's mother. Again, he regains consciousness and stands in front of the angel of meekness, who removes another P from Dante's forehead as he hears the song, "Blessed are the peacemakers." They must rest here because nightfall will come soon. Virgil explains that the next section is where those guilty of the sin of sloth are held. He also explains that there are two types of love: natural love, which is pure and can't be blamed, and love of mind, which goes wrong whenever it puts anything above God. Virgil also explains that there are three types of sin that are being purged in purgatory. The first type is perverted love, which houses pride, envy, and wrath. The second type are those which don't properly focus on God, such as slothfulness, which moves too slowly in the direction of God. And lastly, the third type are those which have excessive love for earthly things like avarice, greed, and lust. Virgil further explains the processes of love, where the mind captures an image of what it loves, then pushes your desire towards that thing, and when it attains that thing, you receive joy. This can easily become corrupted, so that is why we need our free will to choose good love over bad love. When Dante finally drifts off to sleep, he dreams a strange dream of a siren who sings to him before Virgil rips her guts out. Upon awakening, he is urged by Virgil to continue onward, where he is blessed by the Angel of Zeal, who erases another P. As the two climb, Dante's mind continues to return to his dream, and Virgil explains that once he sees Beatrice, all will be explained. They come upon a group of souls bowing on the ground, one of whom is Pope Adrian. He learns that the souls are guilty of avarice, and because they never look toward heaven in their earthly life, they cannot take their eyes off the earth in the afterlife. The Pope asks for Dante to speak to his family, and the two head on. The entire mountain shakes, and souls sing out, "Gloria in excelsis Deo." A soul appears in front of them, and says that the mountain shakes every time a soul is freed from purgatory and sent to heaven. This soul, Statius, is the one that will be freed. The two continue on with Statius as their guide. When they come to the Angel of Generosity, Dante is again cleansed, and he loses another P. We also learn that Statius stayed here for so long because he spent too wildly, and also because he hid his conversion to Christianity, which caused him to be blamed for sloth. Interestingly, it was the poetry of Virgil which made him begin to ponder Christianity. A group of souls overtakes them on the trail, and one of them is Dante's old friend, Phorace. These souls are quite gaunt, and they look like death would take them if they weren't already dead. Phorace explains that the sweet aroma that flows from the fruit trees around them elicits cravings in the gluttonous. This is just like Eve being tempted by the forbidden fruit. Here, they meet the Angel of Temperance, who cleanses him of another P. When they make it to the top level of purgatory, they see a blazing fire in front of them. The sound of the hymn, "God of Supreme Clemency," rings out around them, and they hear examples of chastity like the Virgin Mary herself. They notice a group of souls kissing one another and yelling random phrases about lust. Then they break into lines of those guilty of homosexual lust and those guilty of heterosexual lust. They all dive into the cleansing fire. The Angel of Chastity appears before them and sings, "Blessed are the pure in heart," and tells them they must go through the purifying fire themselves. Dante is hesitant, but Virgil assures him that though it will hurt, it will not harm him, and that Beatrice will be there when he makes it to heaven. Statius, Dante, and Virgil all plunge into the fire together. The pain is excruciating for Dante, but he knows that he must carry on if he wants to see his beloved. The sound of an angel singing, "Come blessed of my Father," gives them strength. They emerge from the flames to see a great set of stairs as nightfall overtakes them. As they rest, he dreams of a girl singing and picking flowers. It is the biblical Leah, and her sister Rachel is looking at herself in the mirror. We hear that Leah cares about doing, and Rachel cares about seeing. Dante realizes that both of them are essential. Finally, after great effort, Dante, Virgil, and Statius reach the top of the stairs. With great excitement, Dante asks Virgil what is next, but Virgil replies that this is the end of the road for him. Virgil can no longer accompany Dante on this journey, as it is time for him to return to Limbo. After a tearful goodbye, Dante and Statius carry on, where they emerge into a beautiful forest with singing birds and a gentle breeze. They come to a brook and see a lady picking wildflowers and singing an enchanting tune. Dante asks her to come closer, which she does, and he is briefly enchanted by her eyes and her smile. He asks her where he is, and she explains that this is an earthly paradise which was given to humanity, but humans didn't stay there long because of their sinfulness. As he walks with the girl to the opposite bank, he sees a glowing light come from the forest, and music fills the air. 7 candlesticks guide people in white robes as they sing a blessing to Beatrice, and they are followed by 4 6-winged animals with fur and a golden chariot pulled by a griffin. 3 ladies dance to the right of the chariot, the 3 graces dressed in red, green, and white. And to the left are 4 singing ladies clad in purple, the 4 virtues, who are led by one with 3 eyes, followed by a group of 7 elders wearing flower garlands. Thunder claps as the procession stops in front of Dante. 100 angels sing, "Blessed art thou who comest," and with full hands give lilies. Suddenly, flowers fly up through the air around the chariot as a veiled lady in a green robe and red dress appear in front of him. Dante trembles and looks for Virgil, who is no longer with him, and begins to weep. The voice tells Dante to stop weeping, and he recognizes it as Beatrice. After all, what right does he have to weep in such a happy place? Yet, he cannot stop his tears. She says that his grief is his guilt for his sin finally coming to the surface, because Dante lost his way after she died, no matter how much she prayed for him. Eventually, she had to ask God to allow him on this journey to make him righteous. He should have used the time after her death to get closer to God, but instead, he grew further from it. And Dante faints from shame. He awakes in the stream that washes over his sins, and he walks towards the 4 women of virtues, water still pouring from him. The ladies guide him back to Beatrice, where the 3 graces sing a song urging her to unveil before him. When she does unveil, he is spellbound by her beauty, and only turns to see that the procession is moving once forcibly moved in that direction. Statius and Dante follow the procession until they come to a tree, and upon touching Beatrice's chariot, the tree flowers in beautiful rose blossoms, and a song fills the air, which is the most beautiful sound that has ever filled Dante's ears. It causes him to fall into a deep slumber. Upon waking, he sees that Beatrice, the 4 virtues, and the 3 graces are guarding the chariot next to the blossoming tree, while the others carry on without them. Beatrice tells Dante to write down what he sees so he can instruct those on earth. Suddenly, a series of beasts attack the chariot. A dragon unleashes fire in their direction, smashing the chariot with his tail. A leopard sneaks from behind, and a she-wolf charges with her teeth, lashing. All of them combined are no match for Beatrice's divine light, though, and with a strong command, the creatures are defeated. Unfortunately, though, the great chariot is greatly damaged, and the magic used against it turns it into a beast with many heads, and a whore and a giant appear on top of it. The giant hits the whore when he sees her looking seductively at Dante, and the 2 speed off into the forest. This all symbolizes the corrupt state of the Catholic Church and its relation to secular power. They weep at the state of the Church. When they dry their tears, they approach a river which diverges into 2 directions. Dante and Statius are obliged to drink, and when the water touches their lips, they feel cleansed and prepared for heaven. We now find our protagonist finally in heaven with Beatrice. Chilling music fills the air, and Dante is overwhelmed with ecstasy of the sound. The only thing that he finds more enchanting is Beatrice herself, and the lights that surround her in heaven. God has led them to the moon, which is referred to as the first star. When Dante asks about the discoloration of certain patches of the moon, Beatrice explains that some areas reflect light differently, like the way that the soul diffuses energies differently throughout the body. Dante sees some souls that he thinks are being reflected because they aren't clear, but Beatrice tells him that they are actually like that because they were inconsistent in life. Upon speaking to one of these souls, he finds that she was a nun who was forced to marry. Despite this, she is perfectly happy with her place in heaven, even though it isn't higher, because God's love makes her desire nothing more than she already has been given. This interaction leads Dante to have some questions. At first, he wonders why are souls punished if they're forced to do something, and why are there levels to heaven? Beatrice responds in reverse order that there only appears to be levels to heaven to Dante, because he is only capable of a certain level of thinking. So the landscape adapts to him. She answers the second question by saying essentially that a soul is still capable of free will even if under pressure. It's becoming clear that his rational mind is no match for heaven. He then wonders if someone fails to fulfill a vow, can something else be offered in place of the vow? Beatrice then explains that many vows, like monastic vows, are unbreakable except in certain instances of the church relieving someone of their vow, because a vow is someone using their own will to make a sacrifice to God. Dante and Beatrice then arrive in the second heavenly sphere of Mercury. These souls are those that were ambitious in life but lacked justice, such as the Emperor Justinian. This leads Dante to another question. This time he wonders when vengeance can be just. Beatrice explains that humanity abandoned God when Adam sinned, but God became incarnate in Jesus Christ out of love. When Christ was crucified, human nature in Christ was punished for its sin. This act of vengeance satisfied God's plan even if it was done by unjust people, and therefore it was just. Suddenly, Dante feels himself lifted up and carried to Venus, the land of love, which glows warmly against the stars of heaven. The souls that inhabit this place are joyous and gentle. They are those who in life love deeply, but sometimes allowed their love to lead them astray from God. This sparks a conversation between Dante and Beatrice on the nature of love, and while he stares tirelessly into the ocean that is her gaze, she tells him that love that is properly directed leads to virtue, and misguided love leads to vice. The greatest of all love is divine love. Here Dante also sees an old friend named Charles Martel, who tells him that God filled each person with a particular nature, yet people often go out of their way to go against God's will, to try to be something that they are not. As the conversation concludes, Dante again feels himself rise up and is pulled to the sun, which warms his body but does not burn him. He and Beatrice are greeted by a number of shining lights, which include the likes of Thomas Aquinas, Albert the Great, Peter Lombard, Boethius, the Venerable Bede, Gratian, and Richard of St. Victor. Dante is flooded with the feeling that humans occupy their time with earthly pursuits, which often are a total waste, and instead they should look towards heaven. Thomas Aquinas explains to Dante that God in his generosity provided two princes to help guide the church to Christ. One had great love, and the other great intelligence. Francis of Assisi had a great love for poverty and lived in such. Saint Dominic was intelligent and lived just like Francis, but their later followers began to care more about earthly possessions. The second group of lights now join the first, which includes Bonaventure, John Chrysostom, Saint Anselm, the prophet Nathan, and Joachim of Fiore. The lights circle Beatrice and Dante, and the air again fills with the praise to the Holy Trinity. Dante then wonders whether heavenly souls will always glow so bright. King Solomon speaks, and says that in their current state, yes, they will remain this bright, but after the resurrection their souls will grow even brighter. Suddenly, everything around him fades and Beatrice and Dante find themselves on Mars. He looks over and sees the two rings of light in the distance, but now a great beam of light pierces through them. Its light is so fierce that it makes Dante's eyes water and he must turn to Beatrice to escape it, briefly forgetting that every time he looks at her, he gets awestruck with her beauty. He turns once more to try to look at the light, which now appears in the form of a cross. Dante can sense Christ's presence, but he cannot put his being into words or describe the hymn that sounds out. But he does say that it makes him feel like he can conquer anything. Suddenly, there is silence as a shooting star crosses the sky and lands just before the great cross. The light appears to be Dante's great-great-grandfather, Cacciaguida. We learn that he was killed in a crusade, and that during his time, Florence was a much better place. This was before the family rivalries that destroyed their homeland. Dante asks him about his future, and Cacciaguida says that he can see possible futures, not certain ones. But he does say that Dante will likely be forced to leave Florence and go into exile. During that time, Dante should seek refuge with a certain Lombard of good character, while waiting for the wickedness of his party to come back to bite them. Dante worries that if he writes what he has heard here, he will be hated even more on earth, but Cacciaguida says that no matter what people think, that is what he should do. Dante looks over at Beatrice for a moment and again is captured in her eyes, and she encourages him to look back at Cacciaguida. Cacciaguida points out that within the fiery cross are great warriors like Joshua, Maccabeus, Roland, and Charlemagne, and then he returns to the cross himself. Suddenly, in a blink, Dante and Beatrice are in the sixth heaven, Jupiter. This is where the souls of the just are. Stars form around them, and right in the sky, Love justice, you who judge the earth. The souls then congregate in the final M, and it rises and transforms into an eagle's head, which moves Dante so much that he prays that the church on earth will be cleansed of those who corrupt it. The eagle then speaks in a booming voice and says that those who are unjust on earth know what earthly justice is, but cannot perceive the depth of God's justice. The eagle then goes on to say that those who did not know of Christianity can be judged by God, and humans aren't complex enough to fully understand it. But there are people in hell who claim to know Christ, who are being judged more harshly than those who never knew him at all. Dante notices that in the eagle's eyes are those who truly represent justice, like King David, Trajan, Constantine, William of Sicily, Rippius, and Hezekiah. Dante wonders why Trajan and Rippius are in heaven, and the eagle explains that in the case of Trajan, so many prayed for him that he was allowed to come back to life long enough to be baptized. And in the case of Rippius, he was so righteous in life that God opened his heart to Christ. Dante is beginning to realize that he will not be able to fully grasp God's justice because he is merely human, but God's will is always good. Dante and Beatrice ascend to the seventh sphere of heaven, which is Saturn. There a great ladder stands before him, with lights shining down from it. Dante asks why he can't hear any music here, and a soul responds that their music is too beautiful for his mortal ears. Dante then asks him about predestination, to which the soul responds by saying that it is also beyond the mind of a mortal. He also learns that many here were monks in life who fasted and cared not for earthly things, and they complain that many monks now have given up these sacrifices. Benedict is among those who lament. Dante and Beatrice then ascend to the ladder, and he notices that he is under the sign of the Gemini, his own sign. He is grateful for what they gave him, and he prays for strength to continue. Beatrice tells him to look down on earth in the distance, and he is in awe at how beautiful it is, and how far they have traveled. Beatrice points to a distant star which shines brighter than all the rest. This star is Christ himself, whose strength fills Dante, and at last he looks upon Beatrice's radiant smile. Beatrice shows Dante the other stars as well, such as the Virgin Mary and the angel Gabriel, who is a shooting star. They come up to another group of souls, one of which glows brightly and joyously. This is St. Peter. Beatrice encourages St. Peter to quiz Dante on any aspect of faith, hope, or love. First, St. Peter asks simply, "What is faith?" Dante responds by quoting St. Paul, "Substantial to the things we hope, the evidence of things we do not see." He then asks Dante to distinguish between substance and evidence, to which Dante establishes a distinction between mystery and argument. Dante also says that he gets this faith from the Holy Spirit via the Scriptures. St. Peter then asks him to explain who first gave him this faith, and Dante states that he believes it was the one true God expressed in the Holy Trinity. The light of St. Peter sings out and encircles him 3 times in approval. The light of St. James then approaches him and questions him on the virtue of hope. Beatrice speaks out on his behalf, and Dante defends himself by saying that hope is the firm expectation of coming glory, and that it's been instilled in him by the Psalms and by James' own epistle. Dante prays for the promise of the Scriptures, a strong personal relationship with God. Then a light shines that is so bright that it blinds Dante. It is the Apostle John. While still blinded, Dante is questioned by the Apostle, who asks him what the goal of the soul is, and Dante replies that it is Christ, the beginning and end of love. Then John asks how he is going to attain this, and Dante replies that he will attain it through Scripture, philosophy, and the tug he feels towards God because of Christ's death and the deep faith of Christians. The souls break out in him, and Dante is cured of his blindness by Beatrice's enchanting gaze. When he again can see, he notices that another soul stands before him. This is the soul of the biblical Adam. Dante asks him how long he was in the Garden of Eden. Why was God so angry at him? And what language did he speak? He responds that he was only in the garden for 6 hours before the fall, but remained on earth for centuries after that. Upon his death, he spent 4,000 years in hell before being freed by the sacrifice of Christ. God, of course, wasn't angry specifically about the fruit. He was angry about disobedience, and that is why Adam was punished. Also, the language that he spoke cannot be compared to anything of Dante's time because it has long since become extinct. All of heaven erupts into song and fills his ears with ecstasy. Suddenly, St. Peter bursts out with rage and turns bright red. He chastises those that have ruined Rome and are using the church for wealth and warfare. All the other souls join in his rage. He has hope, though, for a savior that will return to the church to how it should be. Suddenly Dante is drawn into the 9th circle of heaven, where there are no stars at all. But Dante realizes that it is exactly perfect. This place is within God's mind. a place too good for sinful humanity. Within Beatrice's eyes, he sees reflected a single point of light, which creates 9 rings circling around a single point. Beatrice explains that though it appears that the center point moves the slowest, it is actually where the most knowledge and love lives. The 9 circles represent cherubim, seraphim, thrones, dominations, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, and angels. All of these are drawn to God, and they pull humanity up with them. Beatrice explains that God created everything so that his light could shine back at him. She explains that angels were made in the beginning of creation with the heavens and the earth. Angels are those who can comprehend God, and their wills are fully fixed on him, and they have no memory because of this. The spheres fade, and Dante and Beatrice now rise into the Empyrean, where the angels and saints live, a place of pure love. This light is so bright beyond comprehension, but Dante can now gaze at it freely. Colors blaze around him, coming to rest in flowers, and a great river flows that is made of light. Beatrice tells him to drink to quench his thirst for knowledge. When he finishes his drink, he looks around to see all the angels and saints before him. Suddenly, the river flows into a great sphere, and the saints stand in rows above him, forming a white rose. The angels fly with their great wings above him as well. He looks towards Beatrice and sees a man now in her place, who is Bernard of Clairvaux. He says that Beatrice is back in her place in the Empyrean. Dante looks at her and prays a prayer of thanks. He then looks up to the brightest light, which shines at the top of the rose. It is the Virgin Mary, who radiates like no other. Bernard shows some of those in this area, like Saint Benedict, Augustine, Saint Francis, John the Baptist, Moses, Anna, Saint Peter, Saint John, and Eve. These are divided into those that looked forward to Christ's coming and those who had faith after he had come. There are even children there that never grew old enough to exercise their wills. Bernard prays, and Dante suddenly feels the strength to look at God. The Virgin Mary grants him further strength to do so, and what he sees is beyond words. So much so that he cannot remember what he saw. Yet he could feel the power of the Almighty God which graces his soul. As the divine light warmed him, he could feel himself melt into pure peace from the source that moves all things. Thanks.